as you prepare series, the Feast of the Pentecost. In actual terms, I should be standing and preaching this. What do I mean by standing? I'll come to it the other way, in another way. Very often we think the Christian posture of praying is kneeling down. No. The actual Christian posture of praying is standing. Why do I say that? My dear friends, Pentecost is 50 days after Jesus' death and resurrection. It follows the Jewish Passover, which is 50 days after that is the Jewish Pentecost, 50 days after the Jewish Passover, where the covenant is celebrated. But in the Christian Passover and in the Christian Pentecost, 50 days, we're not pushing that celebration to the 50th day. All through 50 days, every day of the 50 days, remember the whole 50 days is one day. Every 50 days, every day of the 50 days is an Easter celebration. It's an Easter celebration. In the early church, in these 50 days, you are prevented from fasting, and people prayed only standing. They couldn't kneel down to pray. Why? Because it is festivity. Our faith has been proven. Our faith has been celebrated. And that is the power of the resurrection that we are celebrating, my dear friends. And on the 50th day, we are talking about the Holy Spirit coming to church. But much more, keep in mind, it is the 50th day, the Pentecost, is a replica of the resurrection, especially in the olden church, in the early church. The coming of the Pentecost, as we see in Luke's Gospel and Acts of the Apostles, that is how the whole thing has been patterned after. And the Pentecost is just like another resurrection day. So much so, many baptisms, as it was happening on Easter Vigil, Easter Day, there are many baptisms happening on the Pentecost Day and, of course, throughout all the other Sundays. And therefore, it is called the Octave of Sundays. The Octave of Sundays happening until the Pentecost time. And therefore, the church, that was all, the church with the voice of the Good Shepherd, with the content of love of God, of the new commandment and the new covenant, is now given a new Pentecost. A new commandment of love in the new covenant of the Eucharist written in our hearts, in Jesus' body and blood, and in his death, and because of his death and resurrection, is now in the new Pentecost of the 50th day. The church is given its mission to move forward. And therefore, as you enter the church on the Feast of the Pentecost, you and I are thinking, oh, we need to be renewed by the Holy Spirit once again. It may have its own role. But keep in mind, you're going there for the resurrection to be empowering. You're being empowered by the Spirit with the risen power of Jesus. And that's the point. Because Pentecost is, as I said, I'm repeating again, it is another Easter Sunday, another Easter experience. And therefore, as you enter the church on the Pentecost day, listening to my brother priest and brother deacon go through the new covenant in the Eucharist, celebrate the new commandment of love for your neighbor, and for all that we need the power of the Holy Spirit. But the power of the Holy Spirit is actually the power of the risen Lord. He breathed his Spirit and he gave up his Spirit on the cross. And therefore, in John's Gospel, the giving of the Spirit, Jesus ascending into heaven, and death, everything happens on the cross in one instance, because he didn't have a second book to write. Luke had a second book to write, so he keeps the resurrection, and then he continues with the Ascension and Pentecost in a second volume, Acts of the Apostles. So enjoy the Pentecost, but enjoy it as in the Easter spirit, because it is the Easter power that the Holy Spirit brings to us to guide us into the new church, already broken open by Paul to the nations, already reformed by Peter. And that is the new church you and I are. And that is what Pope Francis had tried to bring it back into the church once again, that we are a new church because of the Spirit. And this new church has a mission ahead of us. Enjoy the Pentecost. Enjoy the day. But beware, always be cautious. Be aware that it is the risen Lord who is walking with you. May the Spirit of God fill you and your family and give you rich blessing. And say a word of prayer for me this day, that this ministry of CafÉ-II should continue with His Spirit and with His guidance. God bless you.